peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Viewers, as you know, we have been at the forefront in the fight against the judiciary. We have stated time and time again that the judiciary in Kenya is the source of the weaknesses that we see that cannot fight the vice of corruption. Millions and millions of Kenyan shillings, billions, have been stolen, and those people have walked scot-free, leaving the courts smiling the following day. It is time, therefore, for President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta to take a further step to bite. We have talked quite a lot. We need to bite. His Excellency needs to bite. He needs to take a step further to bite, to bring about changes in the judiciary. The Kenyan judiciary is an embarrassment to the arms of governance. The type of errors that are made in the judiciary cannot encourage any ordinary whistleblower, like some of us who have stayed course in defending, upholding the principles of the Jubilee government. It is therefore worrying that time year in, year out, we have spoken about judiciary, the corruption, from the time of elections, from it being captured by external forces of George Soros, NGOs, and other institutions that want to dismember this country from every part of governance. Few months ago, a delegation of people went to Italy. They were encouraged to have quite a lot of companies coming to this country to invest. Little known to everybody in Kenya was that these companies were coming to invest, but companies that were investing in this country, coming as investors, were bankrupt companies that had already been declared person and a grantor in terms of economics of those countries. Someone resurrected the pipeline and the lifeline of eating billions of shillings out of a scam, purportedly going to make water, bring water to some arid areas of this country. Every time we talk about corruption, every suspect taken to Muthaiga on Kamata Day like this one mentions someone above. The people of Kenya have been wondering, who is this above? Can the DCI and the other institution tell us who is this above, who has mastered the art of eating everything and everybody, including vomiting on his shoes or her shoes? Is this person omnipotent? Is he God? People will be very happy, Your Excellency, if you did the Israel tactic of bombing the enemy and ending the war in 5 minutes. There comes a time when you take a step to release the fatigue and evaluate whether you are doing very well or you are doing very badly. Thank you very much, viewers. God bless you.
Good morning, wherever you're watching us from this morning. It is just a few minutes past 11 a.m. East African time. I am Miriam Ugutu, and this is Good Morning Africa, coming to you all the way from the Kenya's capital in Nairobi. A lot of news making headlines this morning in the Kenyan newspapers, and I'll get to that later. And then later on, Dr. David Matanga will be coming in at the top of the hour, and he'll have a very special report on the state of the judiciary in Kenya. But right now, I want us to just dig right up to what is making headlines this morning in Africa. And of course, the latest from the Cyclone Idai update is that the Mozambique has begun 3 days of national mourning for the more than 200 people killed by Cyclone Idai, which has wreaked havoc across Southeast African state. Malawi's Minister of Homeland Security intimated that over 700,000 people have been displaced and that there was a desperate need to basic supplies. In eastern Zimbabwe, thousands of people have been left homeless, and ministers admit they failed to anticipate the magnitude of the cyclone. And we go to Cameroon, where in Cameroon, 15 students have been kidnapped from the university in Bouer this morning. The students are members of the university football team and were training on campus for the forthcoming university games when the gunmen appeared. Go to Burkina Faso, where 2 teachers have been killed in Burkina Faso after being kidnapped. The Ministry of Education has confirmed they were kidnapped on 11th of March and buried on Tuesday. The goal of the kidnappers was to scare the teachers into abandoning their post in the region, and that is according to a government source. And we go to Somalia, where a rights group, Amnesty International, says United States airstrikes in Somalia have killed civilians in violation of international humanitarian law, an allegation the United States has denied. Amnesty says in a report that in just 5 airstrikes that it studied, 4 civilians were killed and 7 more injured. And we move to Rwanda, where Rwandese President Paul Kagame is in Angola on a 2-day state visit, where the 2 leaders are expected to strengthen existing areas of partnerships, including air transport, security and justice, immigration, ICT, and good governance. Kagame and Angola's President João Lourenço are expected to address the press later on today. And still, we go back to Somalia, and plans to cater for its own security needs without the backing of the African Union peacekeeping mission have been hit by striking action by government soldiers in at least 3 of their bases located in the critical Shebele region. Soldiers in Somalia are now protesting over months of missed pay. And we go to South Sudan, where South Sudan was ranked the least happiest nation in Africa and the world, while Mauritius ranked the happiest on the continent, the 57th overall in the world. The United Nations report released on Wednesday, March 20th, which is International Day of Happiness, is compiled by asking citizens in 156 countries how happy they perceive themselves to be, as well as measures such as life expectancy, income, and social support. And we go to South Africa, where a record number of 48 political parties will contest in South Africa's national election on May 8th. The Independent Electoral Commission, IEC, said on Wednesday. IEC announced the final tally after the deadline for submission of party candidate list and payment of deposits was made. Now, this is just a little breakdown on what we be expecting in the May elections and the details about, some of the things that we need to look out for during these elections in South Africa. And so far, 48 political parties have been registered to participate in the elections. 26,756,898 registered voters are expected to participate, while 74.6% of voting age population is registered to vote in this year's election. And also, there will be 29,334 registered voters in the diaspora. And of course, there are 22,924 polling stations. So that is just in a nutshell what is happening in South Africa. And of course, the Electoral Commission there is preparing for the elections that are expected to take place on May 8th. And we come back to Kenya, where a Zambian High Commissioner to Kenya, Brenda Mtemba Lembe, has died in Nairobi. A Foreign Affairs Principal Secretary Macharia Kamau on Wednesday said Ms. Mtemba succumbed to injuries she sustained in a road crash in Machakos, 60 kilometers off the capital. Ms. Mtemba, 49, died while receiving treatment at a Nairobi hospital after the crash 3 weeks ago. And we go to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where DRC has acknowledged for the first time that local officials played a role in sparking the slaughter of hundreds of people in last December. At least 535 civilians were killed on December 16th and 17th in 3 villages in Yumbi, a remote territory in the western DRC on the banks of Congo River, some 350 kilometers north of Akin. And we go to Algeria, where the army chief has declared that the public has expressed noble aims during weeks of demonstrations against President Abdelaziz Bouteflika, the strongest signal yet that the army is distancing itself from the long-serving ruler. And we come back to Uganda, where the Lira District Internal Security Officer has become the latest victim of crackdown by State House Anti-Corruption Unit headed by Lieutenant Colonel Edith Nakalema. Mr. Gilbert Winyi was arrested by the Nakalema team on Tuesday on accusations that he received 100 million Ugandan shillings bribe as an inducement to release a corruption suspect. Also arrested in the soup are officials of the district local government and the municipal council. And still in Uganda, authorities of the National Social Security Fund, NSSF, have questioned the integrity of Bank of Uganda staff records with contentious dates of birth and have demanded copies of the national identity cards for verification. The NSSF scrutiny of Bank of Uganda staff records also found that a tune of 1.6 billion Uganda shillings was paid out to unidentified staff between August 2016 and January 2019 without meeting 246 million Ugandan shillings worth of statutory contributions to the National Social Security Fund of Uganda. So that is the latest this morning coming to you from the continent. And in case there's any news out there that you'd want us to share with the rest of the world, please feel free, and you can update it on our on our Facebook page and other social media platforms, and I'll be happy to share it with the rest of the world. So interesting information coming across, and of course the latest cyclone that happened in Mozambique. Of course, the Mozambique government has now announced 3 days of mourning starting yesterday because they've lost nearly over 1,000 people so far that has been counted to have lost their lives. And remember, this cyclone also spread in 2 other countries, and that is in Zimbabwe and also parts of Malawi. And it said that in Malawi, around 700,000 people were displaced by this cyclone. So it has really left many people so very devastated in that southern part of Africa. And of course, we can see that in Cameroon, the insurgents, militants still continue 15 students were kidnapped, from a university. And I don't know if they've been rescued yet, but those are very alarming information coming from Cameroon from the University of Bouer this morning. And also we see some kidnappings also happening in Burkina Faso, and it seems like Boko Haram tentacles have really spread in the neighboring countries, and that includes Boko Haram, and continues to grow its roots and to really spread its activities over there. Now they went to a school and kidnapped these teachers. Apparently they did not mean to kill them, but in the process they ended up killing them. From what the government sources, as I just read earlier, apparently they just wanted to scare the teachers and make them leave the area and not work in the area. And so maybe it was just a botched operation gone wrong. So the teachers ended up dying, and they were buried on Tuesday. Very unfortunate news coming there. And also Somalia, there seems to be trouble with this country. We were hoping that peace will continue and stability will continue, but as it is right now, what Amnesty International report is saying is very alarming, with first of all, the U.S. strikes, the ones they carry out when killing the Al-Shabaab, it is emerging that a lot of civilians fall casualty to some of these strikes. And so far, the Amnesty International is saying that 14 civilians have been killed in just 5 air strikes that have happened in the recent past. And if you've been following this program, is every week almost, there's a report about a U.S. airstrike in Somalia. So you can imagine, out of that, there have been civilians casualty, and that is not very good news coming in from Somalia. And also still it's troubled, as now, you know, without the African Union backing, Somalia government is finding it very difficult to even pay its soldiers. And just yesterday I was reading a news where the Kenyan Defense Force, that part that it was taken care of, it actually retrieved. So, and it is said that Somalia, the Al-Shabaab militants were able to capture that place. So that also makes it very, very porous, and now we have to worry about the security even when it comes to the Kenyan border. And so it's like something needs to be done in Somalia, as if things like this continue, then Al-Shabaab might gain back its strength. As it is right now, it was in the verge of collapsing, but if these wrangles continue, and if African Union peacekeeping mission doesn't continue with the help it was giving to Somalia, together with AMISOM, then maybe things might not work out very right over there, because as it is right now, soldiers are protesting over months of unpayment. That is the last thing you want to hear coming from Somalia, soldiers protesting. The next thing you know, they'll be downing their guns, and that will not be very nice, not only for Somalia, but for the rest, even of the neighboring countries, and that is Kenya included. Remember, we've been the hardest hit by the Somali insurgents group Al-Shabaab, and Kenya has taken a very great hit from that. So we want Somalia to work. We want Somalia to gain its security and to take over its security properly, and we want Somalia to get rid of the menace of Al-Shabaab. That is the only way we're guaranteed that our borders are safe, and also our security is guaranteed in terms of not worrying about some of these activities. So Al-Shabaab must shield and must be contained by all means necessary. So hopefully the AU will reconsider that and help back Somalia government. And of course, South Africa is gearing towards its election this year, and the date has been given by the Independent Electoral Commission in South Africa, and the elections are supposed to take place on May 8th. Remember, President Cyril Ramaphosa has been campaigning, and of course, one of his main agendas has been getting rid of corruption. And even as he does that, we've seen former President Jacob Zuma appearing even in a lot of his campaign rallies, and even in a lot of state functions together with President Cyril Ramaphosa. And that has raised a lot of questions in terms of, now if you, as people have been asking, even a lot of South Africans, if the president is really serious about fighting corruption, and if you remember very well, one of the allegations, or one of the reasons why Jacob Zuma was ousted from power was heavy allegations of corruption. So if he keeps associating himself with Jacob Zuma, so it beats the logic of him, President Ramaphosa, wanting and looking serious about the fight against corruption. A scourge that has not affected just South Africa, but is so widespread, not just in Africa, but across the world. But we know that Jacob Zuma, from the reports we've been hearing, and from, he's even been taken to court, and even right now he's facing a few charges over corruption. So for President Ramaphosa to still associate with himself with ex-President Zuma, it's a very dicey situation, and sometimes a bit confusing even to the people of South Africa. So let's see, the elections are taking place on May 8th, just a few months from now, maybe 2 months from now, or less than 2 months from now, and around 26,700,000 over 1,000 registered voters are going to vote in South Africa this year, and they also have registered diaspora votes, which counts to 29,756 votes. 29,334 registered voters in the diaspora who are expected to vote in this year's elections in South Africa. And of course, among other things, the land reclamation reform, the land reforms has also remained a very murky issue in South African politics. If you can remember very well, towards the end of last year, the NSC was supposed to take a vote, and they wanted the lands to be given, to be taken back, but without payment. And so when you look at things like that, and you look at what really got Mugabe into problems, you know, the ex-president of Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe, was actually a Western darling until I think around 2000, when he decided to take very radical measures when it comes to the land matters in Zimbabwe, because he felt as though Zimbabweans, the indigenous Zimbabweans people, their land were taken, you know, without their consent, by force, and by brutality was also meted on them during the colonial period. And so it felt as though it was time for the lands to be given back to the rightful owners. So that was really inevitable at that time, but what critics have been really arguing about is the manner in which President Robert Mugabe took to really implementing the land reforms in Zimbabwe. And so that really attracted the problems that still Zimbabwe is trying to come out today. A lot of heavy sanctions from the United States, from the UK, and even Australia, to be surprising. And from then on, a very darling of the West became a villain within no time. And that is still why Zimbabwe has any problem. So this also is a very dicey issue in South Africa, and it is left to be seen how President Cyril Ramaphosa, should he be elected again, how he's going to deal with this. And these are things forms part of the campaigns right now in South Africa. So thank you very much. I will continue with the rest, but first of all, I'd like to appreciate some of our viewers this morning. Alban Kelvin, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Mazi Obi Okoli is saying hundreds of Southern Kaduna indigenous have stormed Abuja to protest the incessant and gruesome killings of their members in Kajulu local government area by persons suspected to be herdsmen. The protesters were clad in black t-shirts on which it was written, "Stop the Kajulu Massacre Now" was inscribed. The coverage on Unity Fountain, where they condemned the deafening silence of Nasir El-Rufai, a governor of Kaduna State, on the massacre in Adara communities in state. They also demanded the immediate release of their leaders who have been in detention for over a month, just as they urged the international community to intervene by prevailing on the government to end the senseless killings. So far, over 1,000 people killed, and the president of Nigeria and the Kaduna State governor has done nothing. So that is a report by Mazi Obi Okoli. I don't know if there are people around there you can substantiate these reports, but you mentioned there somebody that the governor of Kaduna, let me find his name, El-Rufai. Remember, just before the elections happened in last February, he made a very careless and a very reckless statement when he was saying actually it was a threat to the international election observers, and he said, if you're coming to Nigeria to observe the elections, that's all you need to do, and we don't need your opinion. Otherwise, you're going to go back. Your bodies are going to go back in body bags back to your countries. And that really was very controversial. So the governor of Kaduna, El-Rufai, has been known to be very controversial. And when things like this happen in his state, and he does not respond to it, according to our viewer, then that leaves a lot to happen. And that also we tend to wonder, sometimes we get the leaders we deserve, don't we? Because we elect them. All right. So thank you so much for engaging with me this morning. Remember, this is Good Morning Africa, coming to you all the way from Nairobi. And Dr. David Matanga will be coming in at the top of the hour, and he'll have a very special report on the state of the Kenyan judiciary. So please keep it here. In the meantime, now we go to Algeria. Now, the Algeria's army chief has declared that the public has really expressed whatever the public has been going out to protest about in Algeria is actually noble. So this move is seen as though the Algerian army chief is actually siding with the people of Algeria. Remember, President Abdelaziz Bouteflika had wanted to contest for a 5th term, and Algerians were not very pleased with that move, because they say this is a president who does not even officiate any duties, as you well know that he suffered a stroke in 2013 that has rendered him incapacitated, so he was unable to really carry out his presidential duties, but he still insisted that he wanted to vie. And even when he said that, he was on his way for treatment in Switzerland, where he stayed for around 2 weeks, I think. And then he came back home and met with a large protest. And even with that, he had still insisted that he will run. And then after a while, he said, okay, fine, I will run, and then I will not complete the term. I'll go half the term, and then I'll give it up. And then the protest continued, and so he had to really give in to the demands of Algerians. And so just the other day, he said, you know what? When the elections happens, he will hand over power to the next elected president. Although a date has not been given for when the elections are supposed to happen, because the last elections were supposed to happen on the 8th of April, so a new date is yet to be given. But when that happens, and when the election happens, and so President Abdelaziz Bouteflika is expected to hand over power to the next president Algerians would have elected. Yes, indeed. And another interesting story, coming from Rwanda, and President Paul Kagame. He went to Angola to meet with the president of Angola, Lourenço, who they're expected to give a press address later on today. But critics look at this as a way of Kagame trying to look for other markets, trying to look for other business partners in the other sides of the world, as it is right now. The problem with Uganda has refused to go away. Every day we wake up and we see just new information, a new feud developing between these two countries. And so Paul Kagame seems to be out there looking out for the interests of Rwanda. Remember, he has really accused Uganda of very serious, accusations, saying that it appears as though Uganda is really hosting some people who are against President Kagame. And I remember just a few months ago, I think probably 2 months ago, Uganda deported one of MTN's top staff, that was Rwandese, another lady. She was deported from Uganda, and so that was just a tip of the iceberg, and then that was followed by other things. And so today we see the feud has escalated, and now it has opened another door, and we're seeing other things developing, and so we're just waiting to see how this feud would end. And this comes at the expense, of the East African community. Remember, President Yoweri Museveni handed power, the chairmanship of East African community, to President Robert Kagame just, I think, in January or so. So I don't know how that will work out, especially when they go for these meetings, the East African community meetings. Abdelaziz Ahmed is saying, why there's only election observers in Africa, not other parties in the world? Well, Abdelaziz Ahmed, I think, from my understanding, a lot of these elections, the Western world, they tend to fund a lot of our elections in Africa. So if you let somebody fund whatever it is you're doing, if someone is paying for your school fees, for example, they feel they have a right to ask for your slips, for your for your papers, to know how you're doing, right? So that is normally what happens in Africa, because a lot of we cannot even fund our own elections. A lot of these countries are unable to fund their own elections. So when you ask for help from the Western world, and you're unable to find one of even the basic services for your own country, and you need help, you're opening the door for these people to come and, really offer patronage. So they have a say. By that, you give them a right, and they have a say to know and to oversee how their money is being used. So if you're going to ask for help, for funding, for grants and things like that, then be sure that these people would want to have a say, and they feel like they have a stake, not just in elections, but even how you're running your country. And that's why they feel that they have to send us election observers. As we know, democracy is evolving, and it looks like it's taking a bit of time in Africa. It's not evolving fast enough. So they normally feel like there's a need, to patronize us in a way, which I really don't agree 100%. But now, unfortunately, that is the situation. And unless anyone out there has another different theory, that is just my own theory in my head. But, I could be wrong. Who knows? Paulo Adnedu says, good morning, my people watching from the city of Hanover, Germany. Please, why Punchline YouTube channel point does not work anymore? Oh, so sorry for that. I'm sure the production has heard that and they're working on it, and I think it should be up and running in a few. I apologize for that, because we're normally live on Facebook, on YouTube, and as well as on our Twitter handle. You can go there and look for Punchline Africa. And also we're live in conjunction with South Cameroon Broadcasting Corporation, all the way from Ambazonia, and our satellites are in Berlin. So thank you so much. You have lots of options how you can find us this morning. And Aguot, you're saying good morning, Miriam, and Dr. Matanga from Northeast United States, that is New York City Eastern Time Zone. Thank you so much, Aguot. Dr. Matanga will coming in at the top of the hour, and he'll be bringing us the latest. He has a very special report about the state of judiciary in Kenya. If you've been reading the headlines from Kenya, a lot is happening in our judiciary right now. A number of Supreme Court judges are facing allegations that needs to be investigated, and yesterday one of them was has been put on trial and is set to face a tribunal over very serious allegations of graft, and so is a few more others. And remember also there's a Kenyan who went to court, who went to the JSC, which was the Judicial Service Commission, to accuse even the Chief Justice of Kenya, David Maraga. So that is happening right now, and so it's a lot to talk about. And so Dr. David Matanga will be coming in at the top of the hour, and he'll be giving a very special report on the state of the Kenya judiciary. So in the meantime, you have me to keep you company. So whatever it is, wherever you are, and in case you're having any information that will be useful to the rest of our viewers, please feel free to share with me, and I'll share with the rest of the world. So I was just going through what is happening in Africa this morning from what I read in the headlines. And South Sudan has been ranked the least happiest nation in Africa. And according to some reports, Mauritius was ranked the happiest. And I was just wondering, okay, it is saying that how they came to compile this list is that a United Nations report released on Wednesday, that was yesterday, which was International Day of Happiness. I didn't even know that. Asked citizens of 156 countries how happy they perceived themselves to be, as well as measures such as life expectancy, income, and social support. So out of that, they got to gauge how happy a citizen from a particular country were. And from that, the report ranked South Sudan as one of the least happiest country in the world. I don't know how I feel about that. Please give me your thoughts on that. What do you think? Does the report really reflect the accurate situation, especially in South Sudan? I think it's an issue that we've been talking about here, and some stories coming from that country sometimes are very heart-wrenching, and our prayers are always with the people of South Sudan here at Punchline Africa. But do you think the report really captured the true state of happiness in South Sudan? Is there really nothing to smile about in South Sudan? If there's anyone from South Sudan who could dispute that or maybe agree to that report, you can let us know and I will share your opinion. And Mauritius has been named as, has been ranked as the happiest country in Africa. That is very interesting. And number 57 overall in the world. So I don't know which country is the happiest. The rest of the world, I think I'll check after here. But do you believe that South Sudan is the least happiest country in the world? Because I think there are countries where, you know, could be also in very dire situations. What could be the contributing factors to some of these, you know, reasons as to why? Yeah, Koang Paul Chol, you're saying we are not smiling at all. Yes, indeed. I can understand that because from the reports we read here every day, really, there's nothing much to smile about in South Sudan, but still, did the report capture the real situation in South Sudan? Let me know. So anyway, let me take a very short break, and then when I come back, then I'll be taking you just shortly through what is making headlines in Kenya this morning, and then we can continue looking at other news making headlines in Africa. And as I do that, please let me know, did the report capture the main situation in South Sudan, being ranked as the least happiest country in the world? And also, please don't forget, at the top of the hour, Dr. David Matanga will be coming in with the state of the judiciary in Kenya. I am Miriam Mugutu. Please don't go too far. I'll be right back.
Any form of ill treatment, the judiciary is supposed to help, but slowly and painfully, something is emerging in Kenya as far as the war of corruption is concerned. The judiciary seems to be playing a role of stagnating and even frustrating the international approaches of fighting corruption. The judiciary in Kenya has sunk so low to the point that judges no longer speak with one voice. If you look at the rulings that have taken place in the last 6 to 7 months, you will wonder whether this court is under the guidance of the Chief Justice, or there is what we could call uncoordinated troop movement of anybody making decisions, whatever decisions, whether they hurt the country, the security of the country, the security of the people of Kenya, whether they hurt the economy of this country. These judges have done it, and they have done it without looking back. Political activism has taken over the legal minds that we used to have in these courts. There is a need, therefore, for overhauling the entire system that can bring about good system that can help the government in the fight against corruption. President Uhuru Kenyatta has a desired legacy. A desired legacy cannot be reached when you have a corrupt, incompetent, inept judiciary. Several cases slip away. Take the cases of NYS1, NYS2, people who have been given high-profile cases. These cases seem to have oozed away. It is very sad, therefore, for the people of Africa to sit, watch a judiciary dismantle itself and dismantle other institutions.
Welcome back. In just you're just joining us, this is Good Morning Africa through Punchline Africa Television, coming to you right all the way from the Kenya's capital in Nairobi. I am Miriam Ogutu, and just we went to the break. I was just going through some of the news making headlines in Africa. And remember, the last item said that South Sudan was ranked the least happy country in the world. This was through a UN conducted survey. And so Abdi Aziz Ahmed, you're saying Somalia was ranked the most happiest country in the world in the year 2017. Really? Okay. And Koang, you're saying civilian massacres, killing every day. These are propaganda groups who are laughing at us. We are dying every day. This is not true. And you're also saying, Dr. Matanga and Miriam's civilian massacres are happening every day in South Sudan. I know. All right. I think you're just repeating the same thing you're trying to emphasize. But all the same, keep engaging with me, even as you wait for Dr. Matanga to join us at the top of the hour with this very special report about the Kenyan judiciary and what is really happening in our judicial system in Kenya. So we look at some of the headlines in Kenya this morning, and the Star newspaper, DCI probes missing 5.6 billion Kenya shillings e-citizen cash. And now a private company set up a pay bill number linked to the platform and collected funds. All right, I have to look for details because this is becoming very interesting now. So just part of that I'll read. The Directorate of Criminal Investigations is tightening the news around high-flying Treasury officials and directors of two firms implicated in the 5.6 billion e-citizen scandal. The Star has established that the DCI has launched investigations into the controversial online payment portal in a major probe that could turn the spotlight on powerful government officials. Now, if you live outside this country, you don't understand. Just a few years ago, the government turned all its services. If you're going to get a passport, if you go, whatever you're going to pay, as long as you are going to a government office, you pay through an electronic process, through an online process, it has been dubbed as the e-citizen cash, because it was discovered that the government was losing a lot of money from the cashier payments through the hard cash. So they decided, you know what, because money payments, mobile phone money transfers in Kenya is one of the biggest, actually is the leading way of money transaction and money transfers in Kenya today, and indeed in some of the parts in the world. So the government decided, if you have to, when you go there seeking for these services, once you've done all the formalities, the payments will be done through an e-platform. So you go to your phone and you pay, or you go to your bank account and you forward the money to the e-platform. And now some dubious people have discovered another way of siphoning this money. So when you hear things like this, the government is trying to find ways of, getting rid of these loopholes, and some very smart or weird Kenyans somewhere, or individuals, still find their way. And now we are waking up to a headline of 5.6 billion Kenya shillings e-citizen cash has been lost. I don't even know how to respond to that. But those are very serious matters. And the DCI says that he has started investigation and will keep Kenyans informed of the progress even as we move on. Those are very worrying times, and the government is losing a lot of money from that. They used to lose a lot of money from just paying through the cashiers and the hard cash, and they thought, the government thought maybe this will be a good way, and for a while it was working, and now some individuals are trying to outsmart the system, but hopefully the director of criminal investigations will able. That guy is quite busy right now. The things that he's really going after is just, I don't know what time he sleeps. It's a lot going on in Kenya right now, and corruption is really eating even in some places you really never would have thought. So there we are. And DP Ruto here. I can see one of another headline in the Star newspaper still saying the graft fight targets me. That is what Deputy President William Ruto yesterday said. He's being targeted in the war on corruption, and he also said that has degenerated into impunity. He said at a conference in Mombasa that there is an attempt to paint him in a bad light for political reasons. He made the remark as he opened the first Interprofessionals Summit. So there you go, Dr. Our Vice President is saying that the war on corruption is very targeted at him. Okay. All right. I don't know what Dr. Matsanga will have to say to that, but we will hear when he gets here. And still, the Standard newspaper, one of the leading newspapers in Kenya, saying justice is on trial. And Justice Jecton Ojwang to face the tribunal following allegations of graft. I think I've mentioned that. And when Dr. David Matsanga comes on, that is what he'll be tackling in. So I'll not even get into the nitty-gritty of it. He'll come and he'll talk to us about it. But now 900 million Kenya shillings life cover boost for civil servants. So civil servants have received some money from the National Hospital Insurance Fund that was clear to sign insurance cover deal for the civil servants and police after case challenging award is dismissed. Remember, police in Kenya did not even have that medical cover, so it's a good thing, a progress that is being made towards taking care of our civil servants in Kenya. So that is a kudos to the Kenyan government. So it's just all about graft and what is happening this morning. And we see that a former anti-corruption Caesar estimates that the country has lost about 6 trillion to theft in the last decade, and that his name is John Githongo. Remember, he's the one who blew the cover of one of the biggest scandal of our time. Okay, we thought then until NYS happened, but you know, the golden bag scandal. And so, all right, so that is that. It's just about graft, and police find fake gold inside Barclays safe deposit box. Now, this is what I don't really understand. Let me just read part of the details from the newspaper. The bomb disposal unit was yesterday called to Barclays Bank Queensway branch after a suspicious package was discovered in a safe deposit box. The bomb squad arrived shortly after Director of Criminal Investigations George Kinoti left. Now, Kinoti yesterday spent 3 hours at the bank seeking to know how and why management allowed individuals to store unsuspected cargo. You know, it is believed that the bank safes is about 15 inches square. That's what that's the measurement of the bank safe. But the big box that was found the other day with the fake money measured around about 5 meters. So it was worrying how they even 3 meters. So it was worrying how it even found itself in the safe box in the first place, because it was not fitting. It could not fit in the safe box. So how did it find itself in the bank's premises? And so now we see another fake gold was discovered in a safe box in the same premises, Barclays Bank, a very reputable bank. And so this leaves a lot of questions and a lot of answers to be desired here. And hopefully the DCI will get to the bottom of it. Still matters judicial. I will not even get into that. And we see a Zambian diplomat who died here yesterday. Now, Foreign Affairs Cabinet Secretary Monica Juma yesterday led Kenyans in mourning the loss of a Zambian High Commissioner to Kenya, Brenda Mutemba. Now, Mutemba, who was 49 years old, succumbed to injuries sustained in a road accident that happened February 26th. So she's been in hospital since February 26th, and she succumbed to her injuries yesterday. So we pray for peace and comfort to the family and friends of the late Zambian diplomat to Kenya, Miss Muntemba. All right, so that is that from the Standard newspaper in Kenya. Let me see what you're saying here. Okay. Ufa. Okay, Kwang, you're saying South Sudan is not happy at all. All right. Ufa, Finland is the world's happiest country. Thank you, Ufa, for joining me this morning. Abdulaziz Ahmed, you're saying, dear sister, if you have any doubt, Somalia was ranked the most happiest country in the world in the year 2017. All right, I'll do my homework. Okay, Kwang, you're saying, what kind of happiest? These propaganda groups are telling us here about South Sudan. This is not true. Republic of South Sudan needs peace. Peace is number one in South Sudan. Yes, indeed. I think yesterday was the world happiest day. So that is why they did the report. Yes. And Ufa, you've just given me a whole list of the countries. And you're saying Finland is number one, followed by Denmark, and then Norway, Iceland, Netherlands. I'm not surprised. A lot of them are in Europe. So what is it that is happening in Europe? And the list is South Sudan, Central African Republic, Afghanistan, Tanzania, Rwanda, Yemen, Malawi, Syria, Botswana, Haiti. What do you mean Tanzania? I'm surprised. But when you look at South Sudan, Central African Republic, Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria, even Botswana is then Haiti. A lot of those countries have faced a lot of civil wars and turmoil in the recent past. And Abdi Aziz, you're saying Ruto was a target this war against graft. That is the feeling on the ground. You also feel as though he is the target on the war against corruption. So you feel like the world or Kenya or some particular section of Kenyans are just out there to get him. All right, thank you so much. That is your opinion, Abdi Aziz, and thank you so much for your company this morning together with Kwang and the rest of you. All right, and on the Daily Nation this morning, still the top headlines is top judges in fight of a lifetime, and standing accused are 6 of 7 judges of the highest court in the land, including the president and the Chief Justice, David Maraga. As I said, I will not get into the details of that. That is what Dr. David Matanga will be coming to do at the top of the hour. And so we're almost there. And yesterday, a requiem mass was held in Nairobi for the plane crash victims. You know, the Ethiopian plane crash that happened about over a week and a half ago in Ethiopia. And so yesterday, there was a mass held in remembrance of these loved ones who passed away and perished. And one of the kin to one of the people who lost their lives, they said, you know, we are not going to have to bury the soil. We believe that maybe God wanted our kin to just end the way it ended in Ethiopia, and so they just found peace in that, and they said they were not going to bury any soil. Remember, the victims perished, and when the families and relatives went there to look for their remains, they were told it was impossible to get any remains for a burial ceremony, and so a lot of them opted to take part of the soil from the crash to go and perform burial rituals. And remember, the Ethiopians who also perished in that unfortunate air crash, also I think they buried empty coffins. Yes, so very trying times, and we continue to pray for the affected families. So we're just a few minutes away, about 2 minutes away, or a minute away from the top of the hour, and so I'll be getting ready to just pack, even as we wait for Dr. David Matanga to come in, and he'll be joining us in just a few. And we see a lot of wrangles even in the Kenyan political parties. Yes, indeed. And yes, and so that is that. We wait and see how that will play out. And so we continue praying for the victims of the very unfortunate air crash that happened in Ethiopia about 1.5 weeks ago. And Abdulaziz, you're saying same top Kenyan political elite have properties in Mogadishu. Do Kenyans know that? All right, keep bringing in the information. We thank you so much. And right now, that marks the end of the first part of Good Morning Africa. Dr. David Matanga will be joining us very shortly, so please don't go too far. And remember the very special report on the state of judiciary in Kenya.
to promote, facilitate the independence and accountability of the judiciary and the efficient, effective, and transparent administration of justice. In its meeting of 19th March 2019, deliberated on various matters touching on petitions against various judges of the superior courts. The Judicial Service Commission considered 2 new petitions, one by Yusuf Ibrahim Dimbili against the Honorable the Chief Justice for alleged gross violations of the Constitution, and another by Mohammed Sheikh against 4 judges of the Supreme Court, namely the Honorable Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, Honorable Justice Professor Ojwang, Honorable Dr. Smokin Wanjala, and Honorable Lady Justice Njoki Ndung'u, for alleged gross misconduct, misbehavior, and incompetence, as well as breach of the Constitution and the oath of office. Having considered the same, the Commission directed that the concerned judges be served with the petitions, and they were given 14 days within which to file their responses to the same. At the same time, the Commission also considered responses to 17 petitions that had been filed against various judges of the Court of Appeal and the High Court. Upon deliberations, the Judicial Service Commission admitted 9 of those for hearing and found no merit in the other 8 and accordingly dismissed them. Lastly, the Commission received a report from a committee of the Commission that had been set up to consider the petition filed by one Nelson Oduor Onyango and 8 others against Supreme Court Judge Honorable Professor Jackton Ojwang. The petition detailed instances which the petitioners believed constituted grounds of misconduct, impropriety, conflict of interest, and a breach of judicial code of conduct on the part of the Honorable Judge, particularly in sitting with other judges of the Supreme Court on application number 49 of 2014, Town Council of Awendo versus Nelson Oduor Onyango and others, despite being conflicted and being closely associated with the county government of Migori and the governor, Honorable Okoth Obado. Regrettably, the Honorable Judge, despite notice being served upon him, refused to attend the hearing. Upon presentation of the report by the committee, the full commission deliberated on the same at great length and found that the petition had disclosed sufficient ground to warrant a recommendation to the President to set up a tribunal for the removal of the Honorable Justice Ojwang, and accordingly adopted it. The CJ will, in the course of the day, send the petition to His Excellency the President. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That is the press statement we had. We are not taking any questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, viewers. Welcome to Punchline Africa TV, broadcasting all the way from Nairobi, the Republic of Kenya, simultaneously in London. Good morning. Good morning wherever you are in Babazonia, Ground Zero, and in West Africa and most of the parts of Southern Africa, where it is still good morning. Viewers, this is a special assignment or exclusive broadcast regarding the situation in the judiciary of the Republic of Kenya. Viewers, as you may know, for the last 2 years, since August 2017, my television and other pressure groups, Pan-African groups, Pan-African Forum, think tank, several of my think tank organizations affiliated to peace and Pan-Africanism in Africa have been pointing out the pitfalls of the judiciary in Kenya. We have been telling the people of Kenya that the entire judiciary of the Republic of Kenya is corrupt, incompetent, takes bribes, fails to deliver justice. It is no longer the altar of justice, especially the Supreme Court, which is the apex court, the highest in the land of the people of Kenya. I personally have been on the forefront to fight for this justice to return. I was a victim. I'm still a victim of a bad judiciary, a bad, incompetent Chief Justice who has not, up to date, realized that his methods of administering the court have led us to where we are today. President Uhuru Kenyatta and the people of Kenya underwent an election, a second election, after the NGO-sponsored on capture of the judiciary in 2017 accelerated the cancellation and nullification of the 2017 elections, thereby costing the people of Kenya 42 billion gone to the drain and another 12 billion for a second election. Since then, the train of civil or evil society has infiltrated the judiciary of the Republic of Kenya, surrounded it, captured it, used it against the state or one arm of the government in the Republic of Kenya. The Chief Justice and the other members of the Supreme Court have been hostages of civil societies sponsored by George Soros, equipped by George Soros, supplied by George Soros, and to some extent financially manufactured by George Soros to create a regime change in Kenya. From 2012 or 2013, I have constantly told the people of Kenya that their actions or their darker forces outside this country that are bent on regime changing the government of President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. The darkest forces paid, the darker forces, external forces, from 2013 have used several avenues into the Republic of Kenya, including money laundering through NGOs and the civil societies that all of you in Kenya know were used as another arm of sabotaging government efforts in the process of democratization and in constitutionalism that Kenya has had and continue to have since the new constitution came into existence. Viewers, it is these external darker forces, these darker forces funded by external agencies, namely Vanguard Africa, of Jeffrey Smith, Kofi Annan Foundation, of the late Kofi Annan Foundation, Open Society Foundation, of Mr. George Soros through bank accounts in Paris, that monies and illicit money, laundered money, dirty money through NGOs arrived in this country. And some of this money found its way through the hands of the businessmen that you are seeing being captured. Some of them who are very close to the courts, very close to the judiciary, very friendly to the judiciary, very attached to the judicial officers, whom we shall name in the due course, or today later. Since then, the judiciary became a hostage of evil society malcontents who were after a regime change because they were not happy with the two men who were leading this country, namely President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Samoei Ruto. The reasons why the judiciary and the civil society were not happy with the two is the question of ICC, which should not be left out of the chapter when you touch the judiciary of this republic. Before Chief Justice Maraga came into existence, the judiciary in Kenya had deliberately refused, and it did refuse deliberately, to state a special division of the High Court that could have handled some cases of minor offenses that took place in order to form what we call a redemption strategy for the healing process of this country. The former Chief Justice, Dr. Mutunga, refused flatly to bring a special division of the High Court that could bring in, through international law and the International Crimes Act, that could solve, so that cases of ICC that had been taken maliciously out of this country, dumped into ICC, could have come back to Kenya. Viewers, the situation in the Republic of Kenya became worse, with NGOs capturing one arm of government. As my production team will show you, you saw all agencies from the world focusing on the Supreme Court. Professor Makau Mutua had an agency. The World Bank had an agency. Another organization from the Dutch government had an agency inside there. Githongo had an agency. Gladiwell Otieno had an agency. Haki Yetu had an agency. Kura Yetu had an agency into the Supreme Court. The problems of the Supreme Court of Kenya and the judiciary in Kenya were compounded by the election, nullification of the election of 2017, of which these agencies that I've just mentioned pressurized, captured the Chief Justice and the Deputy Chief Justice, namely Justice Maraga and the Deputy Chief Justice Mwiru, who were very instrumental in causing the nullification of an election on the basis of bias that we later on saw a repeat of another election, that the petitioner did not come back to take part in that election. What does that tell you? It tells you that the first mission was purely to plunge the country into chaos as manifested by George Soros. George Soros' regime change tactics come into different angles in commercial businesses, in money laundering. People might ask, why George Soros? Why is it that he operates in America where the laws for money laundering are very strict, but he has never been reprimanded by any court in America for money laundering? Where are his finances kept? The finances of George Soros are kept in Paris. The biggest bank account of George Soros is in Paris. It is in Paris that Kofi Annan and the wife of Kofi Annan and Dr. Nana, Kofi Nana, and Jeffrey Smith of Vanguard Africa, and the former Secretary of State for Assistant Secretary of State for African Unit Affairs, Johnny Carsons, and several other people draw the money to come to Africa and give it to African politicians to molest their fellow Africans. It is through that account and through those accounts that most of these NGOs plug the money, bring it to Africa to destabilize institutions like the judicial system of the Republic of Kenya. Viewers, the court grew from bad to worse. There came problems of personal hatred by the judges, especially Justice Mwiru, Philomena Mwiru, the Deputy Chief Justice, who personally is very hateful. She hates certain tribes in this country. I would not like to mention on this national television the sentiments that she made while we are in Khartoum at the invitation of President Bashir. But I will leave it for another day when the time comes and when God directs that I do it. It is that type of hatred, the hatred for one person, hatred for certain tribes and some people, with that background of the ICC chief prosecutor involvement and the Kofi Annan involvement in Kenya, that brought the background that made Maraga fall into the pitfall of hating the current government of President Uhuru Kenyatta without reasoning, without calling, without finding out why there is that type of hatred. It is from there that this type of what you see, the confusion that you see in this Supreme Court of accusation against accusation, each accusation against each judge against the other, and the judge also says, I did this. That one says, I did this. It is upon this and this type of confusion that was in this court that it blew up to the level where today, out of 7 judges, 6 judges have petitions. The 7th one is because other people have not tried to come in to expose the confusion that he might have brought in other places before he arrived in the Supreme Court. It is this type of behavior that there is no more salt left in the Supreme Court of the Republic of Kenya. There is no more salt. And the Bible said once salt becomes saltless, The salt is not salt anymore. Piecemeal changes, piecemeal interrogation by JSC of Professor Jackton Ojwang, Onjoki Ndungu, all other judges that are online or smoking Wanjala. Piecemeal interrogation will not save the image of this court. The image of the Supreme Court of Republic of Kenya is dented, is finished, is gone. It actually went down from that election. It never recovered its image at all. It sank of law when a Deputy Chief Justice became an estate agent dealing with housing and buying houses instead of dispensing justice. It became more confusing when the Chief Justice became incompetent and was not able to run the show as the head of the JSC, which is the head of the Supreme Court of Kenya. It has become more confusing when 5 judges out of the lot, excluding the 2 who are gone, all of them are dented or have accusations or have to clear themselves or have to bring their lawyers or have to have a tribunal. The center cannot hold. Looking at all this evidence on each of them and seeing the evidence that some of us have quietly acquired and kept for the purposes of making sure that this court functions, you cannot have a Supreme Court where the Chief Justice has a petition on his head. The Deputy Chief Justice is in court battling for her life. The 4 other judges are also going to the tribunal to battle for their lives. The integrity of the court and the justice, the amount of pain and anguish, the anguish that the Kenyans have gone through listening to corruption, bribes, bribery, the type of cars being bought for women judges, Range Rovers, the amount of meetings in particular places in Karen, the evidence gathered where it has become a one-stop corner where justice is bought in a recreational hall. And you know, these are serious accusations against the court. There is no way in this world of Africa, whether in my own country, Uganda, where I was born 60 years ago and above, where you would sit and watch the temple of justice, the altar of justice. The altar of justice is an altar of justice being framed, told, equipped, and everybody talks about it as a laughing stock, and you keep quiet. It is therefore the onus lies on Chief Justice Maraga that you have a petition and you are writing another letter to the president to recommend for Jackton Ojwang to be put on a tribunal. One wonders, why haven't you first of all also replied to the petition that is before your head? My Lord Chief Justice, you have a petition of almost 20 pages with very serious, some of the allegations are so serious that once they are investigated, they could come out to be true. The basic thing in Africa, in such circumstances, or in developed democracies, or a developing democracy like Kenya, is to stand up and apologize, vacate, and give chance to the people of Africa, of Kenya, to get new other judges to take over this Supreme Court, the temple of justice, the altar of justice, which is in complete tatters today as I address the world on this matter. Viewers, you well know that for a criminal case to proceed in any institution in the Commonwealth judicial systems, a police record must be obtained of what we call the OB number, occurrence book number. I would like to ask one question as a layman who has read a bit of constitutionalism but biased on international law. If the Deputy Chief Justice committed a crime by biting a girlfriend or a boyfriend in a Hotel X in London, or in a Hotel X in Nakuru, and the police are called on the scene, what is the first thing the police would do? Is to take a statement and arrest the suspect who has bitten the ear of the boyfriend or the girlfriend as a result of domestic quarrel. Why I'm bringing this question is, do you then need a tribunal to judge or to see why the ear was bitten? Do you need to suspend the criminal proceedings where the ear, somebody has been hurt, which could lead to death, simply because the person was a Chief Justice or a Deputy Chief Justice? The game that was played by the court, by the Supreme Court of Kenya, led by Maraga, was to frustrate the DPP and the DCI from prosecuting the case of DCJ Philomena Mwilu. That case did not need a 5-man bench to determine as to whether she can take a plea or not. A plea has to be taken first because this is a crime supposedly to have been committed. It was not a crime committed while in office that the matter goes to the JSC. This is a crime of money laundering, of which some of this money now we are seeing the men who used to sit in the same current point where CCTVs show several times some of the people mentioned in these cases are always around, and the same man Adede has been around. So when you look at these connections and link up all these things, the center cannot hold. The best thing for David, my namesake, with a petition hanging on your, who is going to write a letter to the president for you to be put on a tribunal? The independent men on the JSC. Why can't you first yourself step aside and create room for people to find out whether it is genuine or not? Why do you single? Why run Jackson or Juang first? What is the use? What strategy is there? Jackson is retiring anyway. Is it the possibility that you thought if you were taken down by the petition, Jackson Ojwang would quickly be named acting Chief Justice? Is it possible? Can we take that as a very serious scenario that would have happened for him to be one of the eldest judges in the court? Why are you running him out very fast? Yet you also have a petition hanging. Why don't you make judgment of your own petition as the chairman and excuse yourself and allow the panel of other JSC members to look into your petition, the merits and the demerits of this petition before you start writing letters for Jackson Ojwang Professor to go? The best other method and the medicine that you can use, my Lord Chief Justice, is just resign. Call a press conference anytime today and tell the world you can't hold anymore. My soldiers that I had before within them, they have fallen apart. Allegations have dented us. My team has been dented. It has several injuries. Therefore, the best thing for my team is to step aside. To create a way of Kenya having you to fight corruption, such that you cannot fight. President Uhuru Kenyatta must take note of this. Even if you arrest so many people with diamonds, with gold, with notes, with currency, as long as this court remains with Maraga as the Chief Justice, Muzee, Your Excellency and ndugu yangu, you are wasting time. Kenyans won't see any justice. I'm being frank, because I have no room in my heart for hiding certain things. Even if you do whatever you are doing, as long as this court remains the same court, the struggle, the fight against corruption will never yield any good result until we clean the court, until you clean the court, until you take an executive decision that any of the judges who has a petition, let Kenyans take it in their hands and get justice by having everybody investigated afresh, and then they can go back to constitute the Supreme Court. Viewers, the seriousness of this matter is that it is up to you Kenyans. Our role is just to show you the pitfalls of where we are heading. We are heading in a murky situation where we might have the judges, the Supreme Court not fully constituted, where we might not have judges to take on cases that are increasing on a daily basis, where this country will need time to make very serious judgments that touch on the Constitution. Whoever is playing this tune of regime change is using several approaches to tackle the center. And the center that is being tackled is President Uhuru Kenyatta. And His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta must hear this. It is you they are targeting. Because whatever you go, whichever direction you go to Parliament, there is a section of MPs of his own party who are busy plotting at night, meetings in Mombasa, in Eldoret, in Nairobi, in Bungoma, in Garissa, in Nairobi, in Kisii, in Kisumu. There are so many meetings taking place. And these meetings can only be neutralized later on when they come to the surface by a better judiciary. But if the judiciary is not there, if the judiciary itself is corrupt, if the judiciary itself is part of the strategy to regime change, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, to create apathy towards the state, then we have a problem. I've said it as an African who was born 60 decades ago. I have no shame, no remorsefulness, no regrets to make, because these are facts that I have. These are facts that every Kenyan, some of them fear to tell you, but that is exactly what the Supreme Court of the Republic of Kenya is. Thank you very much. I've spent time to show you that justice is on trial in Kenya. Instead of the judges dispensing justice, justice is dispensing them. The whole Chief Justice and the 5 to 6 judges face serious allegations of misconduct. This is not what Kenyans want. Kenyans want a judiciary that is independent, relied on, capable of arbitrating and looking at the law, interpretation of the law, to make sure that justice is delivered to parties that are aggrieved. But looking at the way things have happened, the center cannot hold anymore. Things have fallen apart in the Supreme Court. Let's take a short break. When we come back, I will be discussing what next and where next and how can we get the solutions. Thank you. Thank you very much, viewers. Welcome back to the second and the last part. This part is very specific. I just want to make observations. The first one was a statement that can be done into a clip that will flow to those who are hearing and listening to us. This is the state of affairs, not only in Kenya, but in most African countries. You have seen elsewhere, in Nigeria, for example, President Buhari sacked his Chief Justice few weeks before elections, replaced him with another confidant of his who is about to hear election petition. I want to tell you frankly that courts in Africa can create conflicts. Cases that are done biasly, in a biased manner, can create conflicts. The situation is not very far from what I have said. I want to thank all of you, to thank the viewers, that is my statement that I've made. My observations remain as I've made them. The Chief Justice and the entire Supreme Court judges should step aside and let Kenyans take the hashtag from there and try to force that stepping aside. If that is not there, then however much you try to please by, piecemeal by piecemeal of looking at the applications of Njoki, Smoking Wanjala, Jackton Ojwang, Wasame, all this, whatever all these things you are looking through will not bring joy to the Supreme Court. The court is dented. Let it pack and leave. Thank you very much, viewers. God bless you. We see each other later in any program, especially the unaffiliated, later on in the afternoon. If it is going to be there, we come back with Miriam Ogutu to say more about these happenings, because this morning she had plenty of it. And I was watching her from wherever I was. Some of the things are very painful to mention as a Kenyan. If you are told that you have 5.6 billion that was recently collected from the e-citizen that President Uhuru just initiated down the road, is also this as actually a hole. As they were paying, it was going into the mouth, and the crocodile ran into the water. We don't know where it is. These are some of the most painful things that need this country and Africa to look at. Thank you very much, viewers. God bless you. God bless Africa. Thanks. Viewers, as you know, we have been at the forefront in the fight against the judiciary. We have stated time and time again that the judiciary in Kenya is the source of the weaknesses that we see that cannot fight the vice of corruption. Millions and millions of Kenyan shillings, billions, have been stolen, and those people have walked scot-free, leaving the courts smiling the following day. It is time, therefore, for President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta to take a further step to bite. We have talked quite a lot. We need to bite. His Excellency needs to bite. He needs to take a step further to bite, to bring about changes in the judiciary. The Kenyan judiciary is an embarrassment to the institutions, to the arms of governance. The type of errors that are made in the judiciary cannot encourage any ordinary whistleblower like some of us who have stayed course in defending, upholding the principles of the Jubilee government. It is therefore worrying that time year in, year out, we have spoken about judiciary, the corruption, from the time of elections, from it being captured by external forces of George Soros, NGOs, and other institutions that want to dismember this country from every part of governance. Few months ago, a delegation of people went to Italy. They were encouraged to have quite a lot of companies coming to this country to invest. Little known to everybody in Kenya was that these companies were coming to invest, but companies that were investing in this country, coming as investors, were bankrupt companies that had already been declared person and grantor in terms of economics of those countries. Someone resurrected the pipeline and the lifeline of eating billions of shillings out of a scam, purportedly going to make water, bring water to some arid areas of this country. Every time we talk about corruption, every suspect taken to Muthaiga on Kamata Day like this one mentions someone above. The people of Kenya have been wondering, who is this above? Can the DCI and other institutions tell us who is this above, who has mastered the art of eating everything and everybody, including vomiting on his shoes or her shoes? Is this person omnipotent? Is he God? People will be very happy, Your Excellency, if you did the Israel tactic of bombing the enemy and ending the war in 5 minutes. There comes a time when you take a step to release the fatigue and evaluate whether you are doing very well or you are doing very badly. Thank you very much, viewers. God bless you.
We call for a non-violent revolution. We call for a non-violent protest. We call for a non-violent march. This is what we are demonstrating to the world, and we have resisted Mr. Biya's army of occupation in our land, but this is a moment that we must continue to stand firm.
Of this nation.
Along with many other Cameroonians, many of you
As far back as the early 90s, and more frequently lately, I have insisted upon the imperative nature of genuine dialogue. Unfortunately, the government's solution has been cosmetic reforms and repression. Teachers, lawyers who raised legitimate concerns were either arrested or forced into exile. Doctors, important people in our society, who asked for genuine dialogue were met with punitive transfers and humiliation. It is regrettable that the government hasn't learned from the past.
We are ambassadors. We don't need anything again. The only solution to the matter is let the government solve this problem by giving our independent freedom.
We have a territory of our own. We recognize international boundaries. We have a language. We have a culture. We have our own laws. We have everything that is required by international standards to be a people and a nation and a state. The UN must give us this right.
We as a people, we have the right to self-determination, and we are determined to go our separate ways.
The people of the Southern Cameroons have suffered under the brutal regime of the annexationists, La République du Cameroun. We have suffered for 56 years, and we finally decided that enough is enough.
I think dialogue is the main solution, because the use of military has never been a solution to a problem concerning this kind of issues. So the government of Cameroon has to dialogue with the Anglophone regions to come to a compromise and let this problem be solved.
Now, we want to inform the whole world that the Southern Cameroonian prisoners of conscience in the jails of Yaoundé are on the second day of their declared hunger strike. Now, we want the entire world to know, because we are convinced that the regime in Yaoundé will be indifferent until they begin to die. While we encourage our brothers in this process, we also call on Southern Cameroonians to join them in a fasting, so that the whole world may know that we are a determined people.
Self-determination cannot be effective without self-defense. We are opposed to violence. We are opposed to war. But if La République, if the UN should continue to dilly-dallying as they are doing, and La République comes now to attack our people, they are forced, they are bound by the law of nature to defend themselves.
Hail this land of glory, we the Amazonians, flesh and